The sun peaks over the horizon, only to illuminate a scene better suited for a sideshow horror act than a Silk Road trading post. Once a bustling hub of exotic fabrics and spiced delicacies, your town now resembles the all-you-can-eat buffet of 100,000 mounted maniacs. You're an unsuspecting trader whose biggest worry was last season's unsold pomegranates, until those same pomegranates became mulch beneath hooves. Now the air is thick with terror and the sharp tang of burned yurts, the prime real estate for opportunistic looters with a taste for chaos. Brace yourself, because the Mongol horde didn't come for a friendly chat. They brought fire, steel, and the kind of hospitality that ends with your roof collapsing. So dim the lights, wrap yourself in your favorite blanket, and before you get too cozy, smash the like button and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy the content I share here. Now, welcome to 1219 CE, where diplomacy is measured in arrowheads and your only export is hope pitched under a burning sky. You awake at dawn to the scent of scorched wool and ash wafting through the open tent flap, your breakfast barter now replaced by the charred remains of what used to be livestock. The acrid tang of burned grass still clings to your nostrils, mingling uncomfortably with the coppery scent of old blood seeping into the dusty earth. You kneel beside a gutted goat carcass, its entrails strewn across the ground, a grotesque confetti of rural ambition. As you gingerly step over a pool of congealed fat, the sour odor of spoiled grain underfoot churns your stomach, reminding you that raiders don't care if your supplies spoil. A stray leather pouch, once brimming with spices, now leaks a sickly sweet perfume that mocks you with memories of wilder meals. Your tongue recoils from the bitter aftertaste of tainted water drawn from a well that once promised respite but now tastes of rust and regret. You sniff tendrils of smoke still curling from smouldering yurts and wonder if your former home has upgraded to a permanent open-air grill. In the distance, the faint sizzle of dripping fat meets the clatter of hooves, a gruesome soundtrack that precludes any hope of tranquility, like your caravan's Wi-Fi trying and failing to stream the world's worst war vlog. You realize your marketplace banter has been replaced by the unromantic hum of carnage, the Silk Road's promise of luxury now a grotesque farce. The sharp stench of rotten hides assaults your senses when you inspect a merchant's ruined caravan, the leather masks now reeking as if they were left out to ferment. Flea-infested rugs lie shredded, their fibers tugged by riders who treated them as disposable as yesterday's news. A half-empty barrel of fermented mare's milk sits discarded, its sour tang hinting at the odd oddity of steppe cuisine, which you now can't bear to taste. Your fingers graze a broken shard of pottery still clinging to flecks of once vibrant spice, an olfactory echo of market days gone mad. Each breath you take is seasoned with the memory of honeyed fruits, once traded at premium, now mushy and cloying beneath layers of ash. The oppressive drift of gunpowder-like dust makes you choke, a grim reminder that no one warned you about dust storms of horse manure. You pinch your nose against the rising whiff of fermented berries rotting in the sun, realizing famine tastes as vile as it smells. With every breath you taste defeat, mixed with a faint hint of cumin that teases your palate as a cruel souvenir. It dawns on you that the silk scents of home have been replaced by an assault on your nostrils, turning every inhale into a minor tragedy. You recall your caravan's last successful haul, the sweet aroma of freshly woven tapestries now reduced to singed scrap. Even the prized black pepper, once the currency of kings, has lost its punch, giving only a weak, dusty tickle. You lift a scorched briquette of charcoal and sniff it for any lingering aroma, only to be greeted by sterile bitterness. A remnant of clove seeds rolls beneath your boot, its faint perfume drowned under layers of dust. The acrid fume of hurriedly abandoned hearths drifts in the cool morning air, promising warmth without any promise of food. You brush ash from your sleeve and nose-leaf mitt, and the gritty residue coats your tongue before you even taste it. A politician's speech would be more comforting than this carnival of char. At least it wouldn't smell like a rotting stew. As the sun rises higher, the heat intensifies the odors, turning your campsite into an olfactory pressure cooker. You realize that surviving under Mongol rule doesn't just test your mettle, it tests the limits of human olfactory endurance. Amid the ruin, you catch a whiff of distant cooking fires, tantalizing you with dreams of bread, only to be drowned by closer smoke. The lingering, zesty trace of citrus fruits from someone's stash collides with the rank odor of charred straw. You taste despair on your tongue and wonder if you'll ever taste cinnamon again without retching. The pungent smell of spoiled meat makes you question every decision that brought you this far east. You scrape a lump of hardened porridge from the side of a cracked bowl, its stale aroma reminding you that hope has its own taste, and it's bland. A faint whiff of rosewater from an upturned vase evokes a fleeting daydream of perfumed baths, only to be snapped by the snort of a passing horse. You lift your face as winds carry a stale tobacco breath from warrior pipes, a bizarre harmony of familiar vice and foreign horror. Each stifled crunch of pomegranate arils crushed under hoof rattles your senses, an elegy to a dying land. Every aroma here seems bent on reminding you that your role as a Silk Road trader has been reduced to scavenger. The robust fragrance of once prized silk threads lingers in the wreckage but tastes as thin as hope. You're tempted to hurl your sourdough ration at the nearest tent pillar just to see if it smells better smashed. A lone sheep bleats, sounding like a complaint just lying there, its odor a mix of musk and mortality. You catch a sudden whiff of spilled wine, likely spoiled and wild fermented, which seems both a curse and a cruel treat. You sniff at a broken amphora, hoping for vinegar's sharp tang, but find only musty despair. The oppressive heat locks odors in like a perfume lab gone haywire, so every breath is a cocktail you can't escape. You sigh and taste resignation, the aftertaste of dreams turned to ash. You realize your senses have betrayed you, and the only spice left is fear. You lick your cracked lips and taste nothing, the emptiness echoing your battered caravan. A stray plume of smoke drifts past your nose, carrying a whisper of cinnamon that stabs your heart. You pinch your nostrils shut, but the world's foul banquet insists on its invitation. Even the whiff of clean water seems too sweet to swallow. You mutter, "At least they didn't bring ketchup," and consider that your new survival mantra. From the moment dawn's flame illuminated the tent flap, you were reminded that in the shadow of the Khan, politics taste bitterer than any spiced tea. Your first encounter is with the Pai Khan, local magistrate, who demands regular tribute in horses, silver, or produce, his voice cold as a winter wind. In hushed tones, he boasts about receiving direct orders from Batu Khan, stamping his decrees on parchment sealed with red wax. He barks at porters to unload your wares, then inspects your furs with a calculating gaze that leaves no room for hagglers. Every merchant must bow low, as messenger riders stamp tribal passes onto their ledgers, proof that even traders have become pawns. You overhear a translator arguing over the exact meaning of kowtow, wary that a single mistranslation could revoke your livelihood. When the scribe's quill scratches out your name beside demanded taxes, you notice how easily a once respected trader becomes a debtor. A group of local nobles flit past in silk robes, Once wealthy families now reduced to begging the Mongol functionaries for protection. The fine line between ally and adversary is a must for survival. One misstep in diplomacy, and you're either rich or ruined. Rumors swirl in the courtyard that a Mongol commander plans to stage a feast, forcing local dignitaries to supply delicacies or face fines. The order arrives on horseback. 20 sacks of grain and 5 barrels of fermented mare's milk. Deadlines enforced by whip crack. You glimpse a trembling town elder handing over coins, his hands stained with dirt and fear, praying that this offering spares his children. A messenger in blue armor inspects scrolls, stamping each with the official mark before shouting, "This is law." Even the local imam treads carefully, his sermons now threaded with praise for Genghis's wisdom rather than holy writ. Behind closed doors, wealthy merchants whisper bribes for exemptions, their silver glinting under torchlight as proof of their desperation. You witness the dark art of doubling invoices, an extra measure of barley here, a hidden tax there, until the Khan's treasury swells. An old trader warns you that once you've greased one palm, dozens more will appear, each demanding a cut of your profits. Navigating these power plays feels like walking a razor's edge, one wrong bribe, and you bleed more than your pockets. The town's council convenes in a tent, adorned with battle standards, but the real decisions are made when the Khan's envoy quietly slips in behind. That envoy's glare carries the power to turn your silks to ashes, reminding you that appearance is the first currency in these games. She counts your bolts of cloth with brisk efficiency, her lips unmoved by pleas of scarcity or hardship. When she inquires about local unrest, you swallow fear as you explain away peasant rebellions as mere drunken brawls. Even the local judge defers to her, signaling that Mongol law trumps any previous customs. You learn that the uniform of power here blends cunning, steel, and a willingness to remind you who really rules. One morning, a white banner flutters. It denotes a tax collector's arrival, and your stomach knots at the news. His ledger is thicker than any grimoire, its margins scrawled with penalties for late payments. Each official's entrance heralds new commandments and new debts, crushing whatever autonomy you once had. A rumor spreads that the Khan strategist will host a tournament, great sport, unless you're forced to supply the victims. You glimpse cages in the courtyard, awaiting combatants chosen from local youths, proof that power can snack on the innocent. In market squares, townsfolk whisper about hidden informants. Anyone could betray you for a few coins or a grain ration. The once cheerful chatter of traders is replaced by stilted compliance, a constant survey of who holds favor and who is next. You realize your profits hinge on flattering the right faces, smiles for magistrates, deference for envoys, and distractions for the taxman. Even your own caravan guard is more loyal to the Khan's banner than to your business interests. You hear of a local prince who tried to negotiate lower levies. His estates have since vanished under the steppe sky. Tales of disappearing nobles circulate as cautionary whispers at every roadside inn. Under Mongol mandates, politics isn't a game of thrones. It's a public auction where your identity is the highest bid. Occasionally, a generous commander issues pardons in exchange for heroic tales, and merchants spin lies to earn their pardon. You practice your best heroic pose in the mirror, collapsed after last week's raid. Heroes here are as disposable as broken arrows. In the governor's tent, you sign a new trade agreement, written in runic script. Details you don't understand, but must obey. The document demands unending tribute, but the reward is safe passage, security you pay for with sweat and coin. You watch the Khan's advisor dismiss a local petition with a flick of the wrist, his laughter echoing over the crowd. Someone jokes that the Khan's word is law, but his smile is sharper than any sword. Even the morning call to prayer has been repurposed as a summons for tribute, marrying faith to function. A lone rat scurries across the floor, pausing to nibble on scattered receipts, the small reminders that all profit feeds the machine. In this world, power is the most coveted spice, and every merchant's breath tastes of ambition. You realize that under Mongol rule, survival demands mastering the subtle arts of pandering and pandemonium. Your heart pounds every time a new decree is read. Your signature becomes your silent surrender. Every scrap of parchment carries hope or humiliation, and you trade both in equal measure. You mutter to yourself that with enough flattery, even a broken sword can sell for a fortune. And you wonder if in the Khan's court, sincerity is the rarest commodity of all. You press your palm against the rough-hewn yurt wall, feeling grooves carved by generations of winter winds and hurried repairs. The coarse wool fabric beneath your fingers itches like a distant memory of better days, every thread stiff with ash and sweat. Your boots, once supple leather, have hardened into rigid armor that creaks with each step, reminding you that flexibility is a luxury here. You lift a battered iron pot, its handle mottled with rust, and the faint grit of burnt grains trapped in crevices. Each ridge of the pot's rim scrapes against your skin, sending a jolt through your wrist like a stinging apology for better meals past. Your cloak, dyed in once vibrant indigo, now feels coarse and uneven, a patchwork of soot-stained repairs. You trace a seam where camel hair was stitched to sheep's wool, marveling at how necessity breeds creativity in the face of destruction. The heavy fabric drapes over your shoulders like a leaden shroud, weighing down both body and spirit. Even the textiles here refuse to comfort you, their textures echoing the harshness of life under siege. A merchant's quilted jerkin hangs nearby, its padded layers flattened and bruised where it was crushed beneath fleeing cattle. You press into the jerkin's fabric, noticing how the once plush padding now feels brittle, as if each stitch mourns its own unraveling. The rough grain of the wooden floor beneath you sends splinters deep into your sandals, each one a tiny dagger of reminder. You stand and test your mail shirt, the interlocked rings tugging at the fabric beneath, constricting your chest with every breath. The metal is cool to your touch, but warmth seeps through from your body, making the rings shift and whisper against one another. Your fingertips trace the edge of a chipped helmet, its dented brim still sharp enough to cut if handled carelessly. The leather straps within it are frayed, ports of failure that threaten collapse with a single misstep. You slip on a pair of gauntlets, the interior padding long since compressed, turning each fist into a box of bruises. The rivets at your knuckles press into your skin, a constant, dull nuisance that you push aside in favor of survival. Armor here isn't protection so much as penance, each piece a reminder of vulnerability and the price you pay to feel safe. Your horse's reins brush against your fingertips. The leather is smooth in places, rough where repairs have been hastily sewn. You run your hand along the saddle's pommel, feeling the deep grooves carved by years of horseback travel and the occasional blow. The stirrup leather creaks under your weight, a protest each time you shift position. You grasp an axe haft, its wooden shaft polished by countless grips yet pocked with gashes from misaligned swings. The handle's curve fits your palm like a half-forgotten handshake, familiar but tinged with apprehension. You touch a merchant's silk sash, its fine thread still soft despite the dust, a brief caress of luxury amid ruin. But even silk here is flecked with charcoal, its smooth surface marred by war's fallout. The hilt of a fallen sword rests beneath your boot. Its metal crossguard is slick with dried blood that flakes off like scabs. You lift the blade and feel its weight, surprisingly light. evidence that steel has sacrificed strength for swiftness. The edge is dull, nicked by stone and bone, promising more grinding work than slicing ease. You trace the subtle wave patterns of folded steel, appreciating the craftsmanship that still shines through neglect. Even weapons whisper of lost artistry, their textures speaking volumes about battles endured and craftsmanship ignored. You regard a pouch of coins, its drawstring coarse linen knotted too tight to loosen without effort. Your fingertips slip over the cool metal of a silver dirham, its stamped relief worn soft from passing hands. Each coin's raised edge has rounded into a gentle curve, telling a silent story of commerce and desperation. You brush ash from a wooden crate and feel splinters that flake off into your palm, a tactile echo of shattered livelihoods. A merchant's tapestry lies in tatters, its embroidered threads pulled apart, leaving a bumpy landscape beneath your touch. You gather a handful of grain and crush it between your fingers, husk and kernel giving way to dusty powder. The texture sticks to your skin, a gritty souvenir of scarcity and survival. You clasp a fragment of fluted pottery, its glazed surface cold and slick, contrasting sharply with the raw clay beneath. The broken edge is razor sharp. You test it gingerly, wincing as it bites into skin. A stray tuft of wool caught on a nail in the floorboards clings stubbornly to your sleeve, resisting every pull. You yank it free, tearing a loose thread that trails behind you like a bleeding memory. Your fingertips burn from holding a hot metal cup too close to the embers. The sting is welcome compared to emptiness. Even the act of cleaning soot from your nails becomes a chore of grieving for what once was. You rub your palms together to shake off dust, but the grit grinds into your skin, a constant irritant you can't escape. Your fingers ache from tying and untying every strap and cord that binds your life here. You flex your joints, testing every buckle and hinge to ensure they haven't seized in wartime neglect. You quip under your breath, if only velvet had a war mode, and slip your hand into another frayed glove, hoping it holds together longer than your hopes. Born under wide skies around 1162, Temujin entered a world of shifting alliances and hardened survival. His earliest memories were woven with the cries of stolen goats and the reprimands of elders. At the edge of his clan's winter camp, a young Temujin learned that a single misstep could cost him honor or livelihood. Hunger and cold honed his senses as much as the blade of a robber's dagger. The taste of goat's milk once signified comfort, but after his first theft, it became a reminder of risk. A gentle summer breeze carried whispers of betrayal before he ever understood the word. His father's death in 1171 shattered any illusion of protection, leaving Temujin to navigate a landscape of opportunistic rivals. Clan elders whispered that his lineage was both blessed and cursed, a double-edged legacy. These early years forged in him a resolve as enduring as the steppe's endless horizon. At this threshold, the boy had already tasted the bitterness of loss and the sharp tang of ambition. His journey from goat thief to leader was only beginning. In his teen years, ancient pacts unraveled as neighboring clans vied for grazing lands and prestige. Temujin witnessed his brother's near-fatal capture by a rival faction seeking to exploit a centuries-old blood feud. The betrayal stung more than any blow, colouring his nights with shadows of suspicion. He found allies in unexpected places, hooded horsemen loyal to his emerging vision rather than dusty genealogies. Under the open sky, he learned to discern loyalty by action rather than ceremony. A broken oath tasted sourer than spoiled mare's milk, and he vowed never to break one himself. Each act of treachery cemented his belief in unity over lineage. By forging pacts of mutual benefit, he began knitting together a tapestry of support across the steppes. With each alliance, his small band grew more confident and daring. Compromise replaced blind deference as his guiding principle, and every pledge brought him one step closer to a burgeoning confederation. The year 1196 marked a turning point at the Tumen River, where water and steel met in decisive clash. Under leaden skies, Temujin marshalled a force drawn from tribes, disillusioned by endless infighting. Horses pawed at the soggy bank, their breath misting in cold dawn air. The hush before battle felt heavy, as if the river itself withheld its song. When arrows arced overhead, the world narrowed to heartbeats and thunderous hoofbeats. In the chaos, he seized the moment to flank a rival chieftain's center, breaking their line with calculated precision. He sensed the shift in momentum as whispers turned to cries of retreat behind enemy ranks. Victory tasted distant but tangible, washed clean by the river's flow. From the muddy bank, survivors raised broken spears in reluctant salute to their new Khan. The Tumen River's waters carried away the past's grievances, leaving space for a leader tempered by conflict and compassion. In the aftermath, tents rose in orderly circles as tribes once estranged found fresh purpose. Hearth fires burned in unison, a signal of unity rather than isolation. The scent of pine and wet earth underlined a subtle victory more political than martial. Stories of the river crossing spread to distant camps with reverent awe. Camps emptied into open plains, ready to follow a vision that transcended old vendettas. Council gatherings grew in size, no longer shackled by petty grievances. A tentative peace blossomed in fields once stained by blood. The boy who had stolen goats now presided over gatherings of thousands, his voice measured and steady. Each decision balanced mercy with firmness, drawing on lessons born in hardship. The ripples of Tumen extended beyond its banks, shaping a confederation that would redefine steppe power. Through these trials, Temujin evolved from a restless youth into a commander whose reputation rode ahead. He held no illusion of effortless rule, knowing that each victory demanded vigilance. His heart carried the echoes of betrayed trusts and reclaimed hopes alike. The path from goat theft to Khanate was etched in lessons of loss, loyalty, and vision. Generations would recall that crossing, not for the clash of steel, but for the forging of unity. Tales spoke of a leader who balanced stern resolve with gentle guidance, an unlikely harmony on the steppe. In quiet moments, he would trace the river's curve and remember the faces of those who chose to stand with him. That reflection became the foundation for an empire not born of cruelty, but of collective purpose. It's curious that the boy who rustled goats would one day rustle the fates of nations. After the Tumen victory, Temujin convened a council beneath a circular tent where he unveiled new laws to bind diverse tribes. He spoke with measured calm, his voice carrying over a courtyard that once echoed only tribal boasts. Each clause outlined obligations and privileges, ensuring that loyalty was rewarded more than lineage alone. Veterans of the river crossing received distinct banners, symbols of honor sewn into sturdy wool. New appointees knelt in unison, their silence marking a collective pledge to unity. Dissenters murmured in corners, but the presence of his trusted lieutenants quelled any immediate challenge. The scent of boiled dumplings mingled with incense as emissaries from neighboring steppe leaders observed the proceedings. Temujin's gaze remained steady, acknowledging each whispering observer with a respectful nod. This moment signaled the transition from battlefield ferocity to deliberate statesmanship. Rations arrived in woven baskets, their contents symbolic gestures rather than mere sustenance. grain, meat, and dried fruits reflected the diversity of the confederation he hoped to sustain. As plates were passed, so too were offers of marriage alliances and trade agreements. He weighed each proposal with care, mindful that a single misstep could unravel months of diplomacy. Under the tent's soft glow, rivals recognized the advantage of mutual benefit over ancient grudges. The concept of meritocracy began to take root in conversations that once centered on bloodlines. A single commendation could elevate a warrior from obscurity to status before distant clans. This approach inspired both hope and unease in equal measure. Even now, those gathered could sense the fragility of this newfound order. Outside the tent, artists carved messages of unity into wooden planks, testament to cautious optimism. Envoys carried these planks back to their own leaders, physical tokens of a binding covenant. Power, once a fleeting prize seized by force, now shaped itself into an enduring structure. Temujin introduced a merit-based ranking system, granting command to those who proved loyalty in trials. Veterans shared tales of their service, earning titles and land along shrinking borders of contest. His closest advisors formed a council that represented each major tribe, a delicate balance of influence. Secret murmurs of defiance persisted, but no clan dared challenge the new framework outright. Temujin's voice rose only when disputes threatened unity, and his words carried the weight of precedent. This governance threshold marked the moment when ambition met accountability. Summoning clan leaders, he assigned roles in the nascent empire's administration with thoughtful precision. Taxation routes were mapped across the steppe, ensuring steady tribute without overburdening distant camps. Seasonally migrating herds found safe passage under newly negotiated pacts. Trade caravans gained royal escort where banditry once ruled unchecked. His reputation as both warrior and arbiter spread across lands as far as the Orkhan Valley. Even the most skeptical elders began to see his vision not as conquest but as collective preservation. The horizon of the steppes felt less threatening when bound by common purpose. Temujin's staff recorded these achievements in early chronicles, hopeful that posterity would honor their architect. At dusk, bonfires flickered in disciplined lines across the plain, a silent celebration of shared destiny. Night cloaked the assembly, but trust glowed brighter than any flame. In that darkness, the seeds of empire were sown under watchful stars. Each ember carried promise, each spark a pledge to endure. In forging order from chaos, Temujin demonstrated that true power lay in unity rather than fear. His legacy would rest not only on conquest, but on the fragile art of governance. And so, the horse, God's strategist, emerged, steering a mosaic of tribes toward a horizon of unprecedented ambition. The first rays of sunrise found Temujin fastening the cinch cords of his horse's bridle, feeling the rough hemp fibers bite into his fingertips. He pulled on leather gloves, their supple surface worn smooth by endless rides across the steppe. Each lamella plate of his armor sat heavy on his shoulders, a calculated burden he bore willingly. Underneath, layers of padded silk keteg pressed softly against his chest, a reminder of craftsmanship imported from distant workshops. The faint texture of embroidered silk nervously whispered of distant courts and emerging alliances. As he adjusted the iron greaves around his calves, the cold metal gleamed against sun-dappled grass. His horse shifted beneath the saddle, the worn felt blanket passing weight evenly across its back. That moment illustrated how every piece of gear carried both protection and purpose. Through the morning chill, The undyed wool of his coat felt coarse, insulating but unforgiving. Temujin ran a calloused hand over the bridle's copper fittings, tracing their slight imperfections. The saddle's wooden frame creaked softly under shifting weight, each grown a testament to long voyages. A single ribbon of dyed horsehair trailed from the pommel, taut and vibrant against muted fabric. Fingers brushed over the leather straps securing his saber, the hide still supple where it flexed most. The horse's mane, trimmed unevenly, tickled his boots as he slid into the stirrups. Beneath armored gloves, his palms bore faint scars from gripping reins through dust and frost. These textures formed a mosaic of a warrior's life, each element shaping his resolve. A clatter of harness rings accompanied his trot toward an assembly of mounted warriors. Straps of hardened leather hissed as archers readied their quivers, the grain visible at every crease. Tactile contrast, the smooth steel of arrowheads against rough twine, drew his gaze to the smallest details. Silk banners above the ranks fluttered against coarser hemp ropes, announcing his orders without a word. Soldiers brushed against one another, moving in precise steps, honed by drills and necessity. The touch of polished horsehair bowstrings told of artisans who prized strength and elasticity in equal measure. Temujin's gauntleted fist found the haft of a ceremonial mace, its iron flanges cold and reassuring. That elegance, buried under battle-ready roughness, framed his growing reputation. Later, within a Yurts circle of felt-laden floors, he settled upon a cushion of woven goat's wool. The walls teemed with embroidered patterns, vague symbols of unity, now tangible beneath his fingertips. Under soft lamplight, the grain of carved wooden posts revealed the artist's subtle hand. Scrolls of sable hair parchment lay stacked on a low table, each crease speaking of distance travelled. Inked charters held firm under gentle pressure, their fibrous surface testament to careful preparation. A gilded box of tokens opened with a faint click, the metal smooth as river stones shaped by time. As he weighed each seal, its ridged edge cradled in palm, he recalled the promises they embodied. Every letter impressed into wax resonated through his senses like a quiet vow. Beneath the tent flap, soldiers tried on new mail wrappers, rows of interlocked rings cool against their arms. The intricate weave of iron and leather produced a comforting rigidity, a second skin shaped by skilled smiths. The coarse padding beneath chain links absorbed the brunt of each test cut, its texture rough but necessary. On the central plinth lay his ornate helm, its bronze surface warmed by the midday sun. Temujin slid a hand across the crest's carved ridges, each detail deliberate and precise. The inner leather lining greeted him with a gentle friction, moulding to the contours of his skull. He lifted the helm, the combined weight of steel and leather settling like a silent agreement. In that moment, the physical burdens of leadership and protection intertwined. Dusk brought a gentle rain that clung to every surface, beads of water collecting on bowstrings and armor plates. The cool droplets darkened the wool of his coat, emphasizing its thick weave against the failing light. Horsehair tassels on his bridle now clung together, their coarse strands stiffened by moisture. With each movement, the layered textures reminded him of the terrain conquered and the alliances forged. Even under rain's gentle touch, his gear spoke of journeys unending and the tactile legacy of a rising Khan. And as he prepared to rest, the weight of armor at his side whispered of tomorrow's trials, quiet, inevitable, and unmistakably tangible. Who needs a spa day when iron plates make the best stress test? Beneath Samarkand's golden dust, the excavation team uncovered whispers of history tucked within layered earth. The aroma of dry clay and ancient pollen rose as shovels broke crusted soil. Archaeologists paused to savor the faint sweetness of preserved grain husks, millennia-old relics of local diets. Tasting a pinch of sediment, they noted a subtle metallic tang that spoke of old iron tools rusting in silence. Each exhaled breath carried hints of powdered silk fragments once traded along the Silk Road. The scent of scorched timber lingered where charred beams had collapsed centuries earlier. A gentle breeze mixed these odors, weaving them into a tapestry of time's passage. As layers peeled away, the taste of camphor from ritual offerings emerged in faint echoes. In that quiet exchange of senses, history tasted both foreign and intimately familiar. Beneath a shallow pit, rounded stones stained with crimson sediment hinted at ceremonial rites long forgotten. The earth's fragrance shifted, now underscored by the sweet decay of collapsed funerary urns. A scholar dipped a brush into a small vial of distilled rosewater to cleanse dusty bones. The gentle floral note balanced the musty odor of burial soil. Nearby, a broken amphora revealed residues of fermented wine, its aroma sharp with residual tartness. Sampling the residue, researchers described a tang reminiscent of aged pomegranate juice. That first sip connected modern palates to feasts held beneath open skies. The wind carried whispers of incense once burned in royal chapels beyond the city walls. Moments of subtle taste and scent bridged the gap between past and present. In deeper trenches, layers of ash hinted at conflagrations whose heat had baked pottery into brittle shards. A faint smoky odor clung to these ceramic fragments like a faded memory. The smell of toasted grain mingled with earth, suggesting hastily burned stores during siege. Specialists noted a lingering bitterness similar to charred barley. Fingerprints of traders seemed to linger on glinting glass beads, carrying the faintest tang of sandalwood oil. Each bead's surface retained microscopic traces of perfumed rituals. The gentle scent of sandalwood floated across the trench, a delicate contrast to the heavier smells of decay. Nearby, small pits contained animal bones, their porous surfaces absorbing centuries of soil aromas. The earth exhaled a whisper of wool fibers once used to wrap offerings for the departed. Sampling a sliver of textile, conservators detected traces of turmeric and saffron, spices prized for ritual feasts. The spice's warm aroma hinted at celebrations held in hopes of guiding souls beyond the grave. In these fragments of feast and funerary rite, taste became a guide to ancient beliefs. A sudden gust scattered fine dust, revealing an iron dagger tip, whose tip bore a faint coppery scent. The proximity of funerary goods and weaponry suggested complex rituals blending honor and sacrifice. Historians speculated on the pairing of meat offerings and martial tokens in blood oath ceremonies. The lingering smell of animal fat and heated steel spoke of vows sworn beneath the steppe sun. Samples of charred meat residue hinted at communal feasts prior to interment. Tasting a trace of residue evoked images of spiced lamb cooked over open embers. A faint sweetness persisted, a reminder of celebration even in the shadow of mortality. Through these sensory relics, the site whispered tales of life entwined with ritual and remembrance. As dusk neared, lantern oil warmed the air around skeletal remains, softening the dust's bitterness. The final scents of the day, a blend of oil, earth, and echoed incense, settled into an ancient lullaby. In that hush, Samarkand's buried souls offered one last fragile taste of their world. and even the coldest soil seemed to hum with fragrant echoes of the Silk Road's pulse, mysteries that still slip through time's fingers. Under a cloudless sky, permit negotiations unfolded as scholars haggled over excavation rights. Government officials hovered at the dig's periphery, their presence heavy with expectations. Local dignitaries pressed claims to ancestral tombs, invoking lineage over archaeological merit. Unearthed tablets became bargaining chips in unseen games of prestige. Each carved glyph carried weight beyond its age, valued for political leverage as much as historical insight. Foreign delegations offered advanced tools in exchange for glimpses of ancient inscriptions. Their proposals promised progress, but risked turning sacred ground into diplomatic currency. Tribal leaders watched from a distance, calculating how alliances might shift with each new artifact. At midday, the site fell silent, as emissaries conferred beneath fluttering banners. The tension was palpable, and the air shimmered with unspoken agreements. A reminder that history often hinged on power. Dinner gatherings followed, where selects shared roasted meat and hushed gossip. Politicians toasted discoveries while subtly probing rivals for weaknesses. The clinking of cups echoed like a muted declaration of influence. Minutes stretched as each sip carried the weight of unspoken treaties. Invitations to private viewings were prized tokens of status within this circle. Scholars found themselves negotiating not only with soil but with shifting loyalties. Court clerks drafted memorandums that read like strategic maps of authority. Every signed document reshaped the balance between preservation and profit. The glow of lanterns illuminated tense faces in makeshift pavilions. In those hushed corridors of power, ambitions gleamed brighter than any uncovered gold. Daybreak brought a fresh round of briefings where ancient kings were mediated by modern bureaucrats. Stakeholders argued over artifact allocation, each claim backed by lineage certificates or royal decrees. The site director served as arbiter, wielding authority akin to a medieval judge. His decisions rippled through academic circles and royal courts alike. Press releases celebrated treasure finds but masked underlying rivalries. Journalists caught wind of covert exchanges, amplifying whispers into public debate. Newspapers splashed headlines on cultural heritage and national pride. Public rallies formed in nearby streets, chanting for artifact repatriation. Politicians leveraged popular sentiment to pressure foreign teams. The dig transformed into a stage where heritage and hegemony played out. Appeals were made to history's guardians, the museum curators, who guarded keys to public memory. In their vaults, relics awaited display or concealment, each choice a statement of power. Conservation experts negotiated preservation techniques with state ministers. Their compromise left archaeologists balancing scientific integrity against political expediency. Late-night meetings refined protocols for site management under watchful eyes. Paperwork grew as labyrinthine as the tombs below. Officials applauded each incremental accord, seeing it as victory over chaos. Yet beneath ceremonial toasts, some feared the real cost of compromise. Progress and politics intertwined in a dance older than any unearthed dynasty. By the final briefing, the newfound coalition gleamed as a delicate mosaic of vested interests. The reverence for relics had become indistinguishable from the reverence for power. At dawn, the dig resumed under the same banners that had hosted treaties, proving that history's stage could be both sacred and strategic. The archaeologist's gloved fingers brushed over the surface of a carved stele, feeling each groove worn smooth by centuries of wind-blown sand. Ceramic shards lay in a shallow puddle, their once glazed surfaces now scuffed and pitted from water erosion. When lifted, the pot fragments produced a hollow thud against the padded table, resonating with lost echoes of distant feasts. Bones bleached by the sun crumbled slightly when fingertips probed their porous edges. Textile scraps revealed a coarse weave, the individual strands rough against the inside of latex gloves. A decorative belt buckle's copper alloy gave a cold, almost slick sensation at its ridged edges. Beneath it, layered cloth felt fragile, the weave so fine it offered no resistance to probing tweezers. Each artifact demanded a delicate balance between firm grip and cautious touch. These details underscored that every relic is both object and storyteller, whispering history through sensation. Horn fragments discovered near a burial pit felt dense and slightly oily, as if still holding Marrow's memory. The excavation team placed them on velvet pads to prevent further abrasion on their smooth exteriors. A carved wooden figurine, its grains striated and splintered, offered a tactile map of age and decay. When turned in hand, its weathered knots pressed into the palm in irregular patterns. Bronze mirror backings were surprisingly heavy, their undecorated reverse faces rough cast from mold seams. The front, once polished, lay dull, microabrasions rising like tiny ridges across the surface. Excavators noted that rubbing a fingertip across the metal produced a faint metallic taste. Leather sandals, preserved in a damp tomb chamber, smelled faintly acidic and crumbled at the straps. These tactile encounters reminded the team that each object bridged past and present, its surface a palpable link across centuries. The sandals' foot-shaped soles bore stitching imprints that revealed handcrafted precision around every edge. A ritual dagger's hilt, wrapped in plant fiber cord, retained a fibrous friction that hinted at original grip patterns. As dust fell, some fragments felt velvety, others sandpapery under the microscope's lens. Tools of the site, trowels and brushes, added their own textures, the brush's bristles catching flecks of ancient pigment. Gloves, once smooth, became roughened by constant contact with soil and stone. In one trench, a copper coin's smooth edge contrasted with a pitted center gouged by corrosion. The archaeologist pressed a cane-handled tool into loose dirt, feeling vibrations travel through the wooden shaft. Every tremor reminded them of deeper chamber walls still waiting to be revealed. In the interplay of hot and cool, the dig became an impromptu tactile laboratory, blending contrast and continuity. A shard of lacquered wood, painted centuries ago, retained enough sheen to feel glossy beneath gloves. Its chipped areas exposed raw substrate that threatened splinter with the slightest touch. Recovered glass beads clicked against each other in a clay-lined box, hard spheres rolling like tiny marbles. Some beads held cracks that ran like tangle-fine lightning bolts, perceptible by fingertip. Carbonized seeds, no larger than grains of rice, crumbled to powder at the slightest pressure. These fragile remnants required tweezers with rubberized tips to prevent crushing. A bronze figurine's patina felt softly grainy, as if ancient dust remained integral to its surface. When lifted, its weight suggested an artistry that prized heft as much as detail. In that silent laboratory, every texture mapped a journey through human craft and decay. Shell inlays on a wooden chest were cool and smooth, each disc inset flush with surrounding wood. The chest's wood, however, still carried rough-hewn tool marks, where chisels had carved space for the inlays. Small stone weights, carved from quartzite, seemed almost warm to the touch under midday sun. The interplay of these heated and cooled surfaces turned the site into a sensory map of past lives. Each touched surface added nuance to the narrative of human hands that shaped them, and in the quiet hum of the excavation, one could almost feel time's own rough fingers brushing every relic. Who knew that history's greatest treasures would double as a medieval stress ball? In the gleaming pavilion reserved for the highest council, a thicket of dragonfly lanterns cast a soft amber glow over silk-draped cushions scented with rosewater. Beneath polished wooden tables, attendants neatly arranged ivory bowls filled with whipped fermented mare's milk, a velvety elixir that left a subtle tang dancing on the tongue. Each bowl exhaled a warm, yeasty perfume that mingled with the distant aroma of burning sandalwood, creating an undulating haze of calm and refinement. Nearby, silver platters held petite portions of Marmot brain hors d'oeuvre, their creamy centers gently seasoned with a whisper of wild garlic and mountain herb salt. The first bite offered a fleeting whisper of gamey earthiness, tempered by the softness of distilled camel cream, a flavor only the elite could appreciate. A delicate waft of boiled yak marrow rose from a low brazier, its smoky richness hinting at ancient fat rendered slowly over smouldering coals. Finely embroidered attendants glided between low tables, bearing clusters of dried apricots steeped in honeyed wine, their sugary perfume wrapping around each guest's senses. Silken tent walls rustled like whispers as a steady breeze carried the faint musk of prized steppe horses, tethered beyond the opulent enclosure. At this calm juncture, the shifting candlelight reflected off gilded saddle pommels, reminding all present of the vast wealth and power under Genghis Khan's banner. Servants refilled slender jade goblets with the frothy mare's milk tonic, each sip grounded by a whisper of fermented lime and desiccated goldenrod. The lingering scent of rose petals persisted, a gentle reminder of distant gardens now far removed from the raw expanse of the grasslands. Beneath a carved oak canopy, crystal decanters brimmed with rare chrysanthemum wine, releasing a floral, honeyed fragrance with each pour. Guests inhaled the delicate fumes before tasting, notes of sharp blossom, a trace of smoke, and a soft undercurrent of sweet stone fruit. Ceramic bowls of spiced millet gruel exhaled wisps of cardamom and toasted fennel, their creamy texture soothing parched throats after long rides. Fragrant pouches of crushed saffron lay alongside plates of roasted pine nuts, their earthy aroma, a subtle counterpoint to the honeyed sweetness in the air. Cushions wrapped in silken brocade bore the faintest residue of musk oil, a signature scent reserved for those in the Khan's closest circle. A hush settled over the pavilion as an attendant passed a delicately scented fan infused with lavender and smoked juniper, reviving weary senses. This delicate pause bridged memory and present, evoking distant summer nights when the frontier skies shimmered with campfire embers. Bowls of chilled sheep fat ice cream, infused with wild mint and flecks of crushed pine resin, followed in measured portions, surprising even the most jaded palates. The ice cream's cool sweetness dissolved in the mouth, releasing a faint piney aftertaste that lingered like a candle's dying ember. At the center of the pavilion, a carved ivory basin brimmed with rosewater-infused barley tea, its delicate aroma drifting through every sleeve and hem. Guests dipped sugared reeds into the tea, capturing droplets that shimmered like dew on morning grass. Nearby, porcelain dishes held slices of dried marmot sausage, their aroma smoky and herbal, each morsel a study in savory restraint. A gentle huff of flowing tapestry fans ushered the scent of cinnamon incense into the gathering, soothing the mind with a quiet spice. Beneath intricately painted eaves, a low fire pit simmered goat broth scented with tarragon, its subtle bitterness grounding the sweeter flavors. Each inhalation carried a harmony of yeast, herb, and smoke, weaving a tapestry of aroma as complex as the Khan's own lineage. For a fleeting sensation, the world beyond the tent faded away, replaced by an intimate concert of refined aroma and taste. Crystal bowls of chopped melon marinated in honeyed vinegar offered a final, gentle acidity, awakening dulled taste buds with soft crispness. Servants trailed in with gilt-rimmed trays of candied lotus seeds, their fragrant sugar shells crackling softly under curious fingertips. The head attendant signaled for peppermint-scented cloths, passed hand to hand, refreshing each guest with a cool, floral breeze. A lone lute player strummed a low, rhythmic melody that underscored the gentle clink of porcelain against jade. The faint scent of hay and wet earth drifted in through an open flap, grounding the scene in the vast, open steppe beyond. Toward the pavilion's edge, vials of crushed iris and wild thyme waited to be pressed into silken scarves, marking each noble's passage. A soft murmur of contentment rose as guests reclined against velvet bolsters, enveloped in layers of fragrance and tranquility. The final course arrived, a steaming plate of sweetened camel rice, its cinnamon aroma rising like a soft exhalation of peace. Hands brushed against brocade cushions embroidered with dragon motifs, catching faint whiffs of jasmine and aged cedar. Each breath drawn in these chambers felt like a gentle benediction, a contrast so stark it nearly hummed against bloodied memories. The taste of fermented mare's milk lingered, a reminder of shared fellowship amid the harsh steppe's extremes. Laughter, quiet and subdued, fluttered through the rosewater-scented air, as though the table itself exhaled relief. With a final soft sip, the nobles rose, their senses anew and spirits gently buoyed by the luxury they embodied. Even in this realm of opulence, every flavor and fragrance bore the echo of windswept plains and the distant thunder of hooves. The episode closed on a standing compliment, the kind reserved for those who could savor Marmot brain hors d'oeuvres without recoil. A single servant extinguished the dragonfly lanterns, leaving only the pale glow of moonlight to linger. The pavilion fell silent, as if the world itself paused to inhale one last exquisite breath. Luxury, it seemed, could be distilled into scent and taste, a soft lullaby for the elite's weary senses. Within the soft lamplight of the grand yurt hall, the great council assembled in a deliberate half-circle, their silken robes whispering as they settled. Each noble bore the weight of carved jade tablets, symbols of decrees awaiting their signature and potential shifts in clan hierarchies. A low murmur rippled through the assembly as the prime scribe unfurled a scroll detailing tribute quotas, its parchment exhaling a faint musk of aged birch resin. High on a raised dais, a velvet-clad envoy presented the latest reports on tributary cities, noting the subtle rise in grain valuations along the Oxus corridor. Silver seals clicked softly as each clan leader affixed their mark, a choreographed dance of power legitimized by stroke and symbol. The air carried a crisp tension, like the hush before archers release their arrows, reminding all present that ink could be as mighty as steel. A delicate pause followed the reading, during which elders exchanged glances and the faint scrape of sandalwood fans punctuated the hush. Hot tea was passed in lacquered cups, its steam perfumed with crushed mint and a whisper of fermented date wine. The council exhaled collectively, the soft clinks of porcelain marking a moment of shared respite. Plans for border realignments lingered in the hush, a reminder that even in ceremony, the steppe's boundaries were ever shifting. When the next scroll arrived, it spelled out the distribution of newly acquired territories, with each clause bending slightly toward the favor of the Khan's most trusted. Clan representatives nodded with practiced restraint, their eyes calculating the long-term balance of influence. The Khan's chief strategist rose to outline the campaign's winter provisions, describing stockpile routes measured in leagues rather than smiles. Each syllable held weight, the room absorbing every nuance as if it were clay molded by destiny. The strategist's voice dripped with calm authority, smoothing rough disputes before they could flare into open dissent. Silk banners overhead whispered of lineage and legacy, their deep indigos and gold threads a silent testament to authority maintained. When a lesser noble challenged a clause, the strategist countered with a measured anecdote about a failed expedition, diffusing heat with narrative precision. The council's tension eased, gravitating back toward consensus with the inevitability of dawn. Breath caught between robes and treaties, the assembly paused in collective reflection. For a moment, the shadows danced along the walls, as though the past itself observed the negotiations. A second envoy presented diplomatic overtures from neighboring khanates, promising alliances bolstered by marriages and shared raiding campaigns. Delicate hierarchies emerged, as each noble weighed personal gain against the broader security of the empire. Jade pendants on their robes clinked softly, each cord echoing the unspoken weight of lineage expectations. A subtle shift in posture signaled approval from the Khan's uncle, tipping the scales in favor of the proposed treaty. Yet another scroll detailed rival offers, a reminder that loyalty on the steppe could be as fluid as the drifting sand. Soft sighs escaped guests as they considered the diplomatic tightrope, each alliance a fragile lattice of honor and obligation. The strategist interjected a quiet reminder. Tribute must not outpace respect, lest old grudges flare anew. Heads inclined in mutual understanding, the council reaffirmed its unity with a coordinated, gentle rustle of robes. The rhythm of negotiation paused briefly, suspended between ambition and restraint. In that pregnant silence, even the lanterns seemed to dim in deference to the gravity of choice. New proposals for ceremonial pageantry arrived next. Festivals at caravan crossroads designed to reinforce the Khan's benevolent image. Indicators of loyalty, gifted horses, rare furs, and lacquered ceramics were assigned precise quotas to display generosity. Debates arose over cost and feasibility, but each objection was met with assurances of long-term stability. The chief steward reminded attendees that spectacle could temper dissent, turning wary subjects into willing spectators. The council nodded in unison, recognizing that the stage could be as powerful as battlefield victories. A final scroll, bound in crimson silk, outlined the codification of laws, marrying customary practice with the Khan's evolving vision. Quiet approval rippled through the half-circle as leaders contemplated the legacy embedded in those strokes of ink. The prime scribe closed the crimson binding with a deliberate flourish, signaling the unofficial end of deliberations. Warm tea accompanied the final gesture, its delicate fragrance a reminder that words, once spoken and sealed, could calm or ignite. As the lantern glow softened, the great council rose in collective grace, robes brushing like gentle wind over grasses. In that serene departure, power was affirmed through ritual rather than force, and the steppe's pulse slowed for a passing moment. Even the distant thunder of hooves seemed muted by the deliberate cadence of ceremony. Each noble departed with scrolls tucked beneath arms, their footsteps echoing promises made and alliances forged. The hall emptied to the hush of a gathering storm, suggesting that even calm negotiations were preludes to action. For a final breath, the flickering lamps cast lace-like patterns on the ground, a silent vow that history would continue to turn on these quiet accords. Fingers traced the embroidered lattice of gold-threaded brocade, as each noble lifted a curved sip of rosewater tea. The weight of heavy velvet robes settled across shoulders like a warm, reassuring embrace, muffling the distant hint of marching hooves. Polished leather boots creaked softly against plush carpet, their thick soles carrying the imprint of every clandestine meeting. A gentle tug on finely braided sashes lulled the tension from taut waists, reminding mind and body that here, formality outweighed urgency. Ornate gauntlets rested on a low table, their iron plates cooled by lingering draughts, cool enough to soothe a fevered brow. When clasped, they locked with a quiet click that resonated through damp bark floors like a soft promise of protection. The ridged haft of a ceremonial mace imprinting palm grooves spoke of countless rehearsed motions, ritual over raw force. Under fingertips, jade-inlaid hilts gleamed smooth and solid, a reassuring counterpoint to the fickle nature of steel blades. In that tactile moment, the world outside receded beneath layers of silk and metal. Hands paused to brush across stitched patches that marked victories past, each stitch a memory pressed into fabric. On closer touch, velvet walls revealed faint impressions of ancestral seals, raised just enough to brush knuckles with history. Beneath robes, fine linen shirts whispered against skin, their cool weave as gentle as a twilight breeze. A soft sigh drifted when a hand sank into a cushion of duck down, its lofty yielding a lullaby for weary bones. Gilded belts, fastened by carved bone clasps, tightened and released with deliberate slowness, mimicking the rise and fall of breath. When a servant smoothed a fold of silk curtain, the fabric slid like water, carrying a hushed rustle through the chamber. Arms brushed against ceramic tea bowls, their smooth curves grounding each delicate sip in reassuring solidity. The cool edge of a bronze incense burner rested against a palm, its base carved with concentric waves that echoed distant campfire smoke. Even the carved ivory combs, meant for ceremonial grooming, offered a subtle massaging vibration across tangled hair. In this tranquil interlude, texture became the language of comfort, each surface a whispered lull. Fingers lingered on the brushed metal paneling of tent frames, its slight grain offering gentle resistance under pressure. A hand drifted over the ridged pattern of camel-hide drums, their taut skins vibrating faintly from unseen music. An ornate silk cushion released a tendril of warmth where elbows had rested, a soft imprint of presence. On a low table, polished obsidian discs reflected candlelight, their glassy smoothness almost chilly to the touch. Velvet-draped armrests bore the faint sheen of well-worn fabric, comforting in their familiarity. Silk scarves, threaded with strands of crushed lapis lazuli, felt cool and weighty as they slipped through fingers. In a single motion, a noble pressed a hand against a carved wooden backrest, the grain following the finger's natural curve. Beneath heavy silken hems, boots sank into plush rugs, their thick underlays cushioning each step. The slight give beneath soles sang a quiet hymn of luxury amid the steppes' stark expanse. Even the iron rings on ceremonial banners presented a tactile reminder of duty, cold, unyielding, essential. Hands met the soft fur lining of winter cloaks, its dense pile pressing warmth into chilled limbs. Fingers brushed the fine chainmail of a ceremonial hauberk, each ring smooth yet resolute under probing touch. On the cuff, a single broken link hinted at past repairs, evidence that even the elite respected the value of mended armor. The shield's polished surface gave way to a slight dent, a discreet testament to battles waged beyond these quiet seals. When lifted, the shield's weight trailed through forearms, reminding bearers of responsibilities heavier than any banquet. A final glide across tapestry-wrapped columns revealed raised embroidery, the threads as soft as whispered secrets. Hands folded together, fingertips pressing into palms, each ridge and line a subtle map of lived experience. At the edge of the pavilion, a silk rope barrier offered a final tactile lesson in separation, soft restraint enforcing polite distance. Even the air carried a slight texture, as if impregnated with the delicate dust of crushed petals. In that gentle communion of surfaces, every anchored hand and resting elbow spoke of privilege held in velvet and steel. The quip-worthy truth remained. Even silken robes couldn't soften the pang of impending dawn. A soft hush falls over the steppe as moonlight weaves through the tent's ornate lattice, murmuring gentle lullabies of distant winds. The lingering warmth of rosewater tea, the faint whisper of silken folds, and the memory of golden lanterns ease any remaining tension. Beyond the pavilion, the solemn pulse of hooves grows faint, replaced by the serene chorus of night insects and rustling grasses. Each breath drawn here carries the subtle weight of history, pressing softly against heavy eyes. Thought drifts on the echoes of jade tablets, amber lanterns, and the gentle swirl of lavender-kissed smoke. If sleep still eludes you, leave a comment below sharing which fragment of steppe luxury lulled you most. And don't forget to subscribe for more nocturnal journeys into history. Sleep well with historical sleep.